Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everyone. I think this is the only GFA Annual Forum where we had more people at the end of a session than at the beginning of a session. This is the way we manage climate risk, and I really appreciate all of you for staying for the whole day, especially for those who come against the headwind, the typhoon. Now, I'd like to spend just a few minutes on a couple of key takeaways from the morning session of the macro opening speech and to various specific topics on transition finance, on AI, on supply chain, and so on. On the macro level, I think really we need to be proud that Asia is the center of global green investment. I'll give you two numbers. One is in terms of actual dollar amount of renewable investment, Asia is 50% of global total. In terms of newly increased capacity in renewable energy, Asia is 70% of global total. That's what I call greenfield investments in the green sector. And everything else we do in terms of the financing services is wrapping up these things into many, many different layers of the products. But the real underground asset generation is the most important action that's happening, and it's majority happening in Asia. And now within the sustainable finance space, I think a few things really make us proud, which is ISSB adoption. It's most popular in Asia, and taxonomy adoption, most popular in Asia. And also lots of incentives are popping up in different parts of the Asia economy, including central banks, regulators, fiscal authorities, and blended financing arrangements. So all these, I think, will be encouraging more private sector financing coming into the sustainability space. And a couple of observations on how China integrates with the rest of Asia and driving the green transformation. One is that China green technology is going south. I've been to a lot of ASEAN countries recently, and every place are showing great interest in Chinese renewable energy, electric vehicles, batteries, so on, because the Chinese things are so cheap and the quality is good. And in terms of pricing, for example, I was in Timor, East Timor, end of last year. Their pricing of power is 4 times of that in China. And with Chinese equipment, you can make a huge amount of money. The internal rate of return is very, very big. And that's why I think equipment is going, technology is growing, the service providers are going there, and the money will be following. Now, in terms of the real economy collaboration, let me give you 2 examples of what's being explored right now. One is China buying ASEAN palm oil. And we're working on the sustainable palm oil standards, which are mutually recognized by China and ASEAN, especially Indonesia and Malaysia. Now, if that's done, then China can be buying a lot more of these sustainable palm oil, which will create a big momentum in agriculture decarbonization in the region. And second example, which I give during my lunchtime, is Australia wants to talk to China on the definition of green iron ore. Now, if China can agree with Australia on what is low carbon net zero iron ore, then China can buy a lot more low carbon iron ore and begin to produce low carbon steel and then export to the rest of the world. So that's kind of a connection, interconnection within the Asia Pacific region, which will help drive not only the real economy activity like trade, but also financing flows. Financing will follow these flows. And now one more thing which I observe as actually attracting a lot of attention is Chinese money, which is cheap relative to the US dollar funding. And this is the Panda bond market and also Dim Sum bond market, which are now attracting a lot of foreign issuers. Especially last week I was in Astana. The Kazakhstan Development Bank has issued a Panda bond in China. And they said they want to package many issuers into one group and looking at the opportunity of issuing that in China. So even after you do the hedging for currency risk, the funding cost is still lower if you tap into the RMB market, whether it's Panda bond or it's a Dim Sum bond market. I think this is an area where we, the Hong Kong-based financial institutions, can actually really participate in an aggressive way. Now, what Hong Kong financial institutions can do, I think, based on the panel discussions, number one, I think we should help our companies to do transition planning. And we have a lot of tools and resources, which part of that is in the repository, which Hong Kong GFA has created. And if you can help them to develop credible, usable transition plan, then they become your clients. And the financing need will follow. And secondly, as we just discussed, AI technology to reduce the cost of disclosure and so on. There's one Chinese tech company which has operated in Huzhou, and they're telling me that they will be able to essentially be an auditor of green labeling for green loans with 95% precision, meaning this auditor is a machine, and they will check all the numbers, with no people, and they will tell you whether the labeling is right or wrong with 95% precision. I think this is the kind of technology is really needed to massively reduce the cost of green labeling, whether it's labeling loans or bonds or other financial products. And of course, supply chain is a big thing because there's so many small companies are not involved in green finance. And the key bottleneck is that they're not in the so-called green supply chain that we recognize. And we need to move them in and financing them through the green supply chain innovation to make the financing more available and less costly. Finally, I actually made 3 recommendations to Chris Hui, our secretary from the FSTB during lunchtime, and I share this with you. I think it should be interesting to some of you. One is consider green risk weighting as a policy tool to incentivize green investing. Now, this is practiced in some institutions like Natixis, which in fact I saw again this morning, and we had a panel discussion. Their innovation on reducing the risk weights for green assets and raise the risk weights for brown assets, which essentially is internal pricing transfer mechanism to allow lower pricing for green lending and higher pricing for non-green lending. And this one, I think 5-6 years ago, I introduced to China. And a couple of Chinese banks are now actually working with a similar approach. For example, Zhejiang Bank has adopted a similar approach. And a few other banks are using different terms, but essentially the same ideas by giving a discount to the capital for the green loans. And these include the Construction Bank and Huzhou Bank. So many of these practices are being applied in different parts of the world, including, in fact, a week ago I was in Hungary, and the Central Bank Hungary was telling me that they, at the system level, adopted something like that, which is called Capital Relief Program for green assets. Again, it reduces the risk weights and, as a result, reducing the funding cost for green lending. I think Hong Kong should consider that, and we're passing that message to the regulator here in Hong Kong. The second thing is really retrofitting, which we published the report today. I think it's a very good report, and a lot of recommendations are very detailed and actionable in the sense that we need to build the data system to monitor the green performance of the building, and we have to have the standards which are used by the industry, the real estate as well as the banking system, and we need to have incentive to make sure that these retrofitting projects are actually profitable enough. And finally, I heard, actually, I asked this question to Eric, whether AI be setting up office, and he didn't answer me. So I was telling the Hong Kong regulator that please get them in, because they do bring a lot of innovation, a lot of resources, and a lot of connection with the Asian region. So all of these are done. I think it's going to be a huge success, for this conference as deliverables. So once again, I'll thank you all very much for staying not just in the room, but many others, I think maybe 1,000 more online with us for the day during the typhoon. And looking forward to you joining our future events, including our many other training events like 90 every year, right? As well as the working group, as well as the Greater Bay Area Alliance, which will host the meeting later part of this year. So stay with us, and we'll continue to serve you, and let's work together to drive a more sustainable future in this region. Thank you.
Thank you.